Why on earth do we do the things we do? You know, it's a question that can drive you absolutely crazy, whether you're looking at a coworker, your kid, or even yourself in the mirror. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and uncover the surprisingly simple logic that's hiding behind even our most confusing behaviors.
I mean, have you ever just looked at someone and thought, what is going through your head right now? Of course you have. It's that universal feeling, right? That mix of frustration and maybe a little bit of humor when people's actions just make absolutely no sense.
But what if I told you that every single one of those actions, from the smallest tick to the biggest outburst, is actually a message? It's not random noise. It's a person trying to communicate a need. And once you learn to read that message, well, that changes everything.
So let's dive right in. This first part is all about becoming a behavior detective and cracking the code on that big question, why?
Okay, so the absolute first thing we have to get on board with is this. All behavior happens for a reason. Always. It's serving some kind of purpose for the person doing it. If we can just figure out what that purpose is, the why, we found the key, not just to understanding it, but to actually guiding it in a better direction.
So what are these big reasons? Well, you'll be amazed to hear that almost everything we do can be boiled down to just 3 core motivations. Let's break them down.
First up, we've got access. This one's pretty easy to get. We do things to get something we want. You see a kid start crying in the grocery store aisle? What's the function there? They want access to that candy bar, right? But it's not just stuff. It could be getting attention from a parent or getting to play with a favorite toy.
Reason number 2 is the total opposite, escape. This is all about getting away from something we don't want. Think about a student who starts acting out in history class. Maybe they find it super boring or really difficult. Getting sent out of the room might seem like a punishment, but for them, it's a win. They've successfully escaped that unpleasant situation.
And our third and final function is sensory. Now these are behaviors that are what we call automatically reinforcing. That's just a fancy way of saying they just feel good to do. The reward is built in. This is things like humming a song you like, rocking back and forth, or tapping a pencil on a desk.
Okay, so we've got our 3 reasons: access, escape, and sensory. But what makes these behaviors stick? What's the engine that keeps them going? Well, that leads us right to the powerful idea of reinforcement. Now pay attention here, because this is something most people get mixed up. When we hear positive, we think good, and negative, we think bad. But in this context, that's not what it means at all. Positive reinforcement means you are adding something to make a behavior happen more. Negative reinforcement means you are removing something to make a behavior happen more. It's just about adding versus subtracting.
And boom, this is where it all clicks into place. Let's go back to our examples. The access function, crying for a cookie, that's driven by positive reinforcement. You add the cookie, and the crying is more likely to happen next time. The escape function, that's driven by negative reinforcement. You remove the boring class, and the acting out behavior gets stronger. See how that works?
This also helps us see the huge difference between reinforcement and punishment. Getting an A+, that's reinforcement. It encourages you to study again. But getting an F, that's punishment. Its goal isn't to take something away to increase a behavior, it's to add a bad consequence to decrease a behavior. It all comes down to one question. Does the outcome make you more or less likely to do it again?
All right, so if we know why a behavior is happening and what's reinforcing it, the big question is, how do we actually change it? Let's look at the first step in that whole process.
So, we've got this term called extinction. It sounds dramatic, but all it really means is you stop feeding the behavior. You remove the reward. You cut off the reinforcement that was keeping it alive. So, let's go back to the kid crying for the cookie. If you suddenly stop giving them the cookie, you're using extinction. But, and this is a big but, you have to be ready for the side effects. You might see what's called an extinction burst, where the crying gets way louder before it goes away. It can even lead to things like aggression, because the person is just so frustrated that their go-to strategy isn't working anymore. And this right here is so important. This is why just trying to stop a behavior usually fails. You're basically taking away someone's only tool for communicating what they need without giving them a new one. To really make a change, you have to teach them a new, better way to get that need met. This is where we get really practical. We're moving from just understanding to actually doing. It's not about stopping something. It's about strategically replacing it with a behavior that works better for everybody involved. Let's see what that actually looks like.
Let's take a student who yells out to get the teacher's attention. That's a classic access behavior, right?
So instead of just saying, stop yelling, you build a new road for them. First, you teach the alternative. Raise your hand. Simple. Second, you teach them the right way to ask for things. And third, and this is the genius part, you can be proactive. You can give that student positive attention on a regular schedule before they even feel the need to yell. You meet the need first. Okay, what about those escape behaviors? What if a task is just too hard or too overwhelming? Well, you can give the person choices to give them a sense of control. You can make the instructions simpler. You can use a visual schedule so they can literally see a break coming up. And most importantly, you teach them the words to ask for a break. You're giving them better tools to navigate their world.
You know, when you really get down to it, it all comes back to this one idea. Behavior isn't some random thing we need to crush or control. It's communication. As this quote says, understanding the function is the first step to guiding behavior in a more positive direction. Once you know the why, you hold the key.
So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What behavior in your life, maybe at home, maybe at work, maybe even one of your own, are you going to look at a little differently now? Not as a problem that needs to be fixed, but as a message that's just waiting to be understood.